Hello everyone, welcome to another mathematical lesson, and our lesson for today is solving quadratic equations by factoring. Now, solving quadratic equations using factoring, we need the zero product property. Now, how does the zero product property works? For any real numbers a and b, for example, if a times b is equal to 0, then either a is equal to 0, b is equal to 0, or both. Now, for you to be able to understand fully how the zero product property works, let's have an example. Now, my first example here, the quadratic equation is already been factored out and equate to 0. Now, how does the zero product property works here? Now, applying the zero product property is simply equating each factor to 0. So you have the factors x plus 3 and 2x minus 1. So you have x plus 3 equals to 0, and the second factor 2x minus 1 equate to 0. And from here, we can solve for the values of x. Now, let's start with the first factor. You have x plus 3 equals to 0. Now, there are two ways in solving this one. Either you use the textbook method, the one that you can see in the book, wherein you use the additive inverse. But in my class, I'm teaching you the shortcut way, which is the transpose method. How does the transpose method work? Simply transfer this term to the other side. Now, transposing method only has one rule. When you transfer a term to the other side, the sign of that term will change to the opposite sign. Okay, so I'll bring down x here, I'll bring down 0, the equal sign, I'll bring down 0, and this positive 3, when we transfer here, it becomes negative 3. Simplifying this one, you have x is equal to 0 minus 3 is negative 3. This is the first value of x. Moving on to the second factor, 2x minus 1 equals to 0. Again, we need to separate this constant, leaving the unknown variable on the other side. So let's transpose this one here. So I'll bring down 2x, bring down the equal sign, bring down 0. My negative 1 becomes positive 1. Simplifying this one, I have 2x. 0 plus 1 is equal to 1. Now, as you can see, my unknown variable still has a numerical coefficient, which is 2. The only way to eliminate this one is to divide both sides by its own numerical coefficient, which is 2. So that 2 divided by 2 is equal to 1. And 1 becomes an imaginary number, so what's left is x. And here's our second value of x, which is equal to 1/2. Now, once you have the values of x, you need to check if you have the correct values of x. How? All you need to do is to substitute each value to your main equation. So let's start with negative 3. If x is equal to negative 3, so you have a negative 3 and a positive 3, that is equal to 0. So any number multiplied by a negative 3 here and then multiplied by 0 here would result to 0. Therefore, negative 3 satisfies the equation, which is equal to 0. So this is correct. Okay. Next, how about if my x is 1/2? I'll try to substitute this 1/2 on this factor here. 2 times 1/2 is equal to 1. And 1 minus 1 is equal to 0. So any number multiplied by 0 is still equal to 0. Therefore, it satisfies my equation. So this is correct. Sir, how did you come up with it 2 times 1/2 equals to 1? Okay, so let's show it here. 2 times 1/2, so this is fraction to fraction. This is not a fraction to fraction, sir, because you have a whole number and a fraction. Okay, let's show this one as a fraction form. There you go. So you have a fraction to fraction. How to multiply fraction? Simply multiply numerator to numerator. So that's 2 times 1. Denominator to denominator. That's 1 times 2. 2 divided by 2 is equal to 1. Therefore, 1 minus 1 is equal to 0. Moving on to our next example. I have here an example of a difference of two squares. So how do we factor this one out? First, you need to factor the first term. What are the factors of 9? So you have 3 times 3. What are the factors of x squared? You have x times x. And what are the factors of your last term 4? You have 2 times 2. The next step is you need to distribute each factor inside this parenthesis and then equate it to 0. So 1 3 here and the other 3 here. 1x here and the other x is here. Notice the location of each factor. 3 and x goes together because they belong to the first term. And here 2 and on the other side is 2. Now since this is a difference of 2 square, all you need to do is to input the plus and minus sign on each factor. Therefore, the factors of 9x squared minus 4 is the quantity 3x plus 2 times the quantity 3x minus 2. Now, let's try to apply the zero product property by equating each factor to 0. So you have 3x plus 2 equals to 0, and the other factor is 3x minus 2 equals to 0. Again, we need to solve for x. We need to separate this one, transpose to the other side. So I'll bring down 3x, bring down the equal sign, bring down 0. My positive 2 becomes negative 2. Simplifying this one, I have 3x equals to 0 minus 2 is equal to negative 2. We need to eliminate the numerical coefficient of x. Again, the only way to eliminate that one is to divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 1 becomes an imaginary number. So what's left is x equals to the negative 2/3. This is the first value of x. Moving on to the second factor. Again, transpose this one here. I'll bring down 3x. I'll bring down the equal sign. 0. My negative 2 becomes positive 2. Simplifying this one, you have 3x equals 0 plus 2 is 2. Again, we need to eliminate the numerical coefficient of x, which is 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 1 becomes imaginary number. What's left is x. And I have the second value of x as 2/3, positive 2/3. So to check if we get the correct answer, again, let's try to substitute the value of x to the main equation, but not here. Because it's a bit complicated, you have an exponent here. Since you already have the factor here, let's try to substitute these values of x in our factored form. So this is negative 2/3. If my x is negative 2/3, 3 times negative 2/3, you have 3 times 2. 6 divided by 3, that's negative 2. Plus 2 is 0. Again, sir, how did you do it? Let's show this one. So you have a negative 2/3. Let's make it fraction to fraction. So you have 3 times negative 2, you have a negative 6. Over 1 times 3, you have 3. Negative 6 divided by 3 is equal to negative 2. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. Any number multiplied by 0 is 0. So meaning you get the first value of x correct. How about this one? If x is equal to positive 2/3, I'll try to substitute it here. Same process as this one. So you have 3 times 2/3, so you have 3 times 2. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Minus 2 is 0. Again, any number multiplied by 0 is 0. It satisfies our equation. Next example. So this one is a trinomial. Okay, but since the other term is on the other side, we need to transform this one into its standard form by transposing 6x to the back to the other side and then equate everything to 0. So I'll bring down x squared. 6x, this will be the middle term. you need to have the order of exponent. So positive transfer to the other side, that becomes negative 6x minus 27. So we have a trinomial here. Now how do we factor trinomial? First, you need to factor the first term and then the second term. So what are the factors of x squared? So you have x times x. What are the factors of 27? It can be 27 times 1 or 9 times 3. That is still 27. I think we only have two sets of factors of 27. Now the next thing that you need to consider after finding all the factors of the first and the last term is the sign of your last term. Your last term is a negative 27, meaning you need a combination of a negative and a positive sign. Okay, but we don't know yet which is positive and which is negative here. Now, how do we know which factor is positive or negative? By considering the sign of your middle term. Your middle term is negative, therefore 9, or the biggest factor, should be negative, and 3 should be positive. Now, after having this one, all we need to do is to distribute each factor inside the parenthesis and equate to 0. 1x here, next x here, 9 here. It doesn't matter where will you place the 9 and 3, as long as the sign of those factors are correct. Now you have the factors of x squared minus 6x minus 27 as the quantity x minus 9 times the quantity x plus 3. Now let's try to apply the zero product property by equating each factor to 0. The second factor, x plus 3, equals to 0. Again, we need to solve for x. We need to transfer this one here. So I'll bring down x, bring down the equal sign, I'll bring down 0. My negative 9 becomes positive 9. Simplifying this one, I have the first value of x as 0 plus 9, that is 9. Next, on the second factor, again, transpose that one here. I'll bring down x, I'll bring down the equal sign, I'll bring down 0. My positive 3 becomes negative 3 on the other side. Simplifying this one, I have 0 minus 3 is negative 3. Again, always check your work by substituting the values of x to the main equation. In this case, let's substitute here in the factored form. 9 minus 9 is 0. Any number multiplied by 0 is 0, meaning this satisfies the equation, equal to 0. The second equation, if we substitute it here, the second factor, negative 3 plus 3 is 0. So any number multiplied by 0 is again 0. Next example. So again, this is a trinomial, but it's a bit complicated because your first term is not a perfect square. So let's try to transform this one into the standard form by transposing that one back to the left side. So I have 2x squared. My negative 5 becomes positive 5x minus 3 equals to 0. Again, the same process. Factor the first term and the last term. So what are the factors of 2? You have 2 times 1. What are the factors of x squared? You have x times x. What are the factors of 3? So you have 3 times 1 only. Okay. Now, in this case, if you have a trinomial with a first term that is not a perfect square, you need to use the trial and error method. Okay, so again, let's distribute each factor inside the parentheses. 1, 2 here, and this one goes here, 1x here, the other one is here. 1, 3 here, and the other one is here. It doesn't matter where we place the factors. Okay, we're using the trial and error method now. Since 1 already has a variable here, so 1 automatically becomes an imaginary number. Now, how do we know where is negative and positive? Since our last term is a negative integer, therefore it's a combination of a positive and a negative number. How do we know which one is positive, which one is negative? By considering our middle term. Our middle term is a positive 5x. Now, as you can see here, if you multiply 2 and 3, you'll have 6. And if you multiply 1 and here, you'll have 1x or x. So we could come up with a 5 here. If 5 is positive, therefore this one should be positive, to have a positive 6 and a negative 1. Okay? Again, let's use the zero product property by equating each factor to 0. So you have 2x minus 1 equals 0. The other factor is x plus 3 equals 0. Solving for x, on the first factor, you need to transpose that one here. So I'll bring down 2x. Bring down the equal sign, then 0. My negative 1 becomes positive 1. Simplifying this one, I have 2x equals 0 plus 1 is 1. Again, we need to eliminate the numerical coefficient by dividing it by its own numerical coefficient, which is 2. It will cancel out, equate to 1. So you're left with x and your first value as 1/2. On the second factor, transpose that one here. Bring down x, bring down the equal sign, bring down 0. Your positive 3 becomes negative 3. Simplifying that one, you have x is equal to 0 minus 3 is negative 3. This is your second value. Again, you can check your answer if it's correct if you substitute the value of x to your factored form. If my x here is 1/2, I have 2 times 1/2, which is equal to 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. 0 times any number is 0, meaning it satisfies my equation. Same goes with negative 3. If you substitute it here, negative 3 plus 3 is 0. So meaning it is equal to 0. Now, in this example, this is a binomial because you do not have any constant here. Now, how do we factor this one out? Notice the common between the two terms. The numerical coefficient of the first term and the second term has a common number, which is 2, correct? So this will be inside your parenthesis as the first factor. Now the variable x here also has a common x on the second term. So the common is x. So notice that we are using the GCF on this case. Finding the common between the two terms. Now how do we find the second factor after finding the common between each term? So simply divide the first term by your first factor. 2 divided by 2 is 1. X squared divided by x is x. Why x? Because when it comes to division of variable, the operation is subtraction of exponent. X here has an exponent of 1. So 2 minus 1 is 1. Okay, copy the plus sign. Again, second term, divide by the first factor. 8 divided by 2 is 4. X divided by x, it will cancel out or equal to 1. So since we already have a variable here, this one here becomes an imaginary number. I will just also remove the exponent 1. And then equate everything to 0. Then apply the zero product property. 2x is equal to 0, and the other factor, x plus 4, equals to 0. Solving for x here, you need to eliminate the numerical coefficient. Divide it by 2 on both sides. So you have x 0 divided by any number is equal to 0. So 0 is your first value of x. Here, transfer that one here or transpose. Bring down x, bring down the equal sign, bring down 0. Your positive 4 becomes negative 4. Simplifying this one, you have x. 0 minus 4 is negative 4. This will be your second value of x. Now to check if we get the correct answer, simply again substitute the values of x to your factored form. 2 times 0 is 0. Any number multiplied by 0 is equal to 0. Therefore, it satisfies the equation. If x is negative 4, so you have negative 4 plus 4, that is also 0. It satisfies your equation. So I hope you learned something today, and I want you to try answering this one in your own. See if you could come up with the correct answers. And that's all for now. See you in my next lesson.